Okay, so now I'd just like to talk to you a little bit more about my background, and the reason for doing that is I think it's important that you know a bit about me before perhaps embarking on making changes. So I guess if we start briefly back as life as a teenager, I was a very nervous teenager. I was a very capable individual, but I had lots of anxiety and self-confidence issues. Felt very inferior around other people, and so at the age of 14, when I first had a drink, it kind of clicked a light switch within me, and I grasped onto that and I used it as a way to self-medicate to help those problems that I had around confidence and being around people. I think as a 14-year-old and even as a teenager, it's not too bad if you use it for those purposes, but as you begin to use it whilst you move into adulthood as well, that's when it can begin to cause real problems as you move forward, and ultimately that's what it did. For the first part of adulthood, sort of early 20s, it wasn't all bad. I had lots of good times as well with friends and going on holidays and things like that. But things began to turn at around the age of 28, and at that point I'd been drinking for around 14 years. I had some problems around work and also some health issues as well. But ultimately I think regardless of those things happening, my biggest problem was with alcohol use, and it began to really accelerate at that point in my life, culminating in a time where I had to decide. I was really at a crossroads in 2013 when I was living in London, where it really was becoming a life or death situation for me, physically, mentally, extremely unwell. I'd lost kind of all my family, all my friends. I had real problems professionally in the working environment as well, and so thankfully I was able to make the decision to go home, to be closer to family, to start trying to make amends, and at that point I decided to give stopping drinking a go, but I quickly realised that just stopping drinking wasn't enough for me. There was a lot of damage that had been done underneath, and a lot of things that I needed to learn about, basically to learn how to actually live without the use of alcohol in my life. My reasons for starting the programme, well, first and foremost, there's just an inbuilt compassion within me and a want to help other people that have been through or are going through similar circumstances to myself, because I know more than anybody how painful that can be, how lonely it can be, and if I can do something to help people move away from that, then great. That's ultimately the main reason for starting the programme. I can appreciate the loneliness and the lack of help that people might not be getting when they're actually going through this situation. So ultimately that's the main objective, is because I genuinely feel that compassion to want to help people get through what I've gone through as well and try and come out the other side. And secondly, I felt that, and I still feel that there is a gap in terms of how people can seek help. It tends to be expensive rehab on one hand, or free of charge Alcoholics Anonymous on the other hand. I think both have their place in society. AA has been tremendously helpful for millions of people throughout the world actually, and certainly played a part in my change. But I'm well aware, as part of the research that I've done, that it's probably an organisation which puts most of the people off actually going towards it because of its religious connotations. And so I must stress that Making Changes is a programme which isn't religious. That's not to say that if somebody is religious they can't do it, they can, but ultimately it is an opt-in model. So I'm hoping that Making Changes is something that meets in the middle and provides a programme for people where AA or expensive rehab might not be a viable option. Another reason for starting the programme is something which I continue to do, and that's raise awareness around problems with alcohol or drug use. Whether you call it addiction, whether you call it alcoholism, I don't think is too important. It's about losing that stigma that surrounds it, and that's something that I want people to do, and hopefully by putting myself out there and making this programme available, it helps people understand that it's not something to be ashamed of, It's something that can affect anybody in life. I've met all sorts of different people that have been affected by it. So I'm hoping that Making Change is a programme which helps us all get that message out there so that it's easier for people to come forward and actually get that help. In terms of the research that's gone into the programme and what it's made up of, I think the main piece of research is actually myself. I think that's tremendously important. It's well known throughout research and academic studies that people who've actually been through the journey themselves tend to lend themselves more to other people that might be going through it themselves, rather than doctors or psychologists or that type of thing. So ultimately the research that I've carried out through my own journey through 2013 does play a big part in the programme itself. However, I was aware that I did need more than that as well when I started to look at creating the programme in 2016. So in 2017, a year later, I decided to start a master's degree in comparative drug and alcohol studies, which was really interesting because it gave me an insight into how academics and scientists and policymakers all looked at these types of issues that we face when going through problematic alcohol or drug use. I began to use that to research more around Alcoholics Anonymous as well, and some of the issues that organisation faces when it comes to people getting help and what people think about it and why it kind of puts people off as well. So as part of that degree, I learnt about the terminologies around things like addiction, successful treatment services, the stigma that certain words carry and all that type of thing. So they've all played a part in coming into the programme. In terms of what's involved within the programme, there are elements which I've taken out of things like AA. There's elements which are associated with Buddhist principles such as mindfulness and meditation. And there's lots of common sense exercises in there as well, which are geared towards things around learning practical methods around acceptance, letting go, learning how to be kind, how to be grateful, compassionate, all these types of things which and I don't speak for everybody, but certainly I didn't have any awareness of these things throughout my 20s, and certainly not when I was at the end of my problematic use, when I was in kind of real danger. I didn't have an awareness of any of these things. So all these have been brought into the programme because I think they are what really help people move away and actually change their lives around.